Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to be smoking 2 briskets, but the focus of the video today is on damper settings. I'm going to be using 3 different settings, a high, medium, and low convection setting. I'm going to show you how that affects airflow, temperature, and the location of the hotspot. It's about 5 a.m. I just got my fire started, so let's get started. Here's 2 14-pound prime briskets from Costco. If you want to learn how to trim your briskets like this, I highly recommend watching the Jerby trimming video. It's probably one of my favorite barbecue videos. So you can see my seasonings on the left over there. I pull the briskets out. As soon as I start my pit up, they'll sit on the counter for about an hour while my pit warms up. Kind of ease into that temperature. Here's a close-up of my seasoning ratio. I just put the briskets on. And for this entire cook, I'm going to be cooking with 2 splits on top of my coal bed. Now for the first 4 hours, my goal is to cook at 200 degrees. So ignore this thermometer on the right because it's sitting right over the hot spot. But you can see right here, my thermometer is right at 200 degrees. And I'm going to be closing the damper down 2/3 to really reduce that airflow, create a low and slow, a very gentle cooking environment to ensure that brisket comes up to temp in a very slow fashion. For today's cook, I'm going to have digital probes in the pit. Take a mental note of each of these locations. This will help demonstrate how the damper impacts temperature in each of the different settings. Let's take a look and see how the pit's reacting to this low and slow cooking environment. You can see I'm maintaining about 200 degrees across the entire pit. On the far right-hand side, I have about a 4-inch hotspot. And the reason there's a hotspot directly next to the firebox is because the air is moving so slowly that as soon as it enters the cook chamber, it rises to the top of the pit immediately, right in line with the right thermometer on the cook chamber door. Another benefit of the slow airflow, it has plenty of time to cool down. So you can see the rest of the temperatures throughout the cooking surface are about 200 to 225 degrees, adding a nice low and slow smoky cooking environment. Okay, so we're about 3 hours in the cook now. You can see I'm maintaining the cook with 2 splits on top of my coal bed. So we take a look at my right thermometer. It's running about 50 degrees hotter than my left because it's directly over that hot spot. Right here on the left, we got 200 degrees, so I'm cooking in that low and slow mode. We'll go ahead and take a look at my damper. It's 2/3 closed, creating that very nice, gentle cooking environment to bring these briskets up to temp. And the benefit of this is you get very even cooking. You can see these briskets have a nice even color. The edges aren't crispy, and they're laying flat. If you cook in a high convection mode or higher heat, you'll see that that flat of the brisket will start to curl early on in the cook. It kind of shocks the muscle, so you want to prevent that. So this mode is very good for that. And also, with the slower airflow, you get some extra smoke flavor on those briskets as well. So things are looking very good at this point. We're at the 4-hour mark. The brisket's not as fragile anymore, so I'm going to bump up the convection and bump up that temperature. You can see I'm still cooking with 2 splits on top of my coal bed, the same size fire. The way I'm going to increase my temperature is by adding some airflow to the pit, by opening up the damper a little bit more. My temperature is about 260 on the right and about 245 on the left now. As we take a look at my damper, you can see I have it opened up more and it's about 1/3 closed. And what this will do, this will encourage that brisket to start rendering the fat on top with the increased convection and that increased temperature. In this setting, my door thermometers are only 15 degrees different from each other, and that's because the hotspot is shifted to the left a little bit because of the increased airflow. You can see the probe 3 location is slightly elevated. As we take a look at the illustration, the hot air and gases coming in from the firebox are moving at a much faster rate now, so as they enter the cook chamber, they're not rising directly to the top of the pit. They stay underneath the cooking surface for a little bit before rising, and you can see how that impacts the hot spot and how it shifts to the left. Also, because the air is moving at a faster rate, even though I have a similar size fire, my temperatures are hotter throughout the rest of the pit because the hot air and gases have less time to cool before exiting the stack. Okay, so now we're at the 8-hour mark of the cook. I continue to cook with 2 splits on top of my coal bed and maintain a similar fire size. For the last 4 hours, I've been cooking at 250 degrees. As we take a look at my left thermometer, I'm holding at 250 even. As we take a look at my stack, I'm still in that medium convection mode with the damper closed 1/3 to encourage rendering of the fat on top of the brisket. So okay, let's go take a look and take a peek at these briskets. These briskets are looking great. You can tell the fat is starting to render. You can see that fat cap starting to split on the bottom right there. There's a lot of moisture on top. These briskets are definitely in the stall. The fat cap on top is still a little bit firm. It has some time to go. Once these point ends start to get crispy, I'll go ahead and protect them with some foil. But so far, looking very good. We're at the 10-hour mark, and the point and flat ends did start to get a little crispy, so I did protect them with foil. This is the first time I'm temping my briskets, and they're cooking very even. Both ends of the flat are temping around 160 degrees. I'm at the point of my cook where I've only got 2 to 3 hours left to cooking, so I really want to set the bark, and I want to make sure the fat cap is rendered to a golden brown. So I'm going to open up my stack, I'm going to cook with hotter temperatures, and I'm going to cook in full convection mode. I continue to have 2 splits on top of my coal bed. My door's cracked 1 inch and my damper's wide open. As we take a look at my thermometers, they're dead even at 275 degrees. And for the rest of the cook, I'm going to try to maintain 275 degrees in this high convection mode with the stack wide open. All right, let's take a look at the digital probe readouts. You can see probe locations 1, 2, and 4 are dead even. The hotspot has moved further to the left with the increased airflow, creating a hotspot right over the probe 3 location. As we take a look at this illustration, you can see with the damper wide open and the extremely fast airflow, as that hot air and gas moves into the cooking chamber, it has a lot of velocity, so it stays under the cooking chamber longer before it surfaces at the 325 degree mark, and the rest of the pit remains at 275, just like the door tell-trues showed you in the previous clip. All right, we're 12 hours in and we're finally ready to wrap. The fat cap's got a nice golden amber color to it. It's rendered nicely. The bark is all dried up. The middle point of my flat is temping at about 177 degrees. And before I wrap it up, I always encourage to feel the underside of the brisket. Anytime I check a brisket, I'm feeling the underside, so I get used to the feel at different stages of the cook. Here's a quick summary of the airflow or convection settings I discussed today. Having the ability to cook in high convection mode or lower convection mode is very important depending on the stage of your cook or what type of meat you're cooking. These briskets I cooked today turned out phenomenal. The smoke flavor was the best it's ever been on any brisket I've ever cooked. So I highly recommend taking your own pit and experimenting with these different damper settings to see if you can make your barbecue taste better. The brisket cook is finally done. It took 14 hours for this cook. I'm going to let these cool down to 145 degrees. Should take about an hour to get to that point. And then I'm going to go ahead and wrap them in plastic wrap to help retain some of that moisture. I have a longer rest for this one. These are going to rest about 15 hours before I slice them. So I'm going to go ahead and put these into my 140 degree warmer. And here's the next day. I'm slicing the brisket. These turned out great like I just mentioned. The smoke flavor on these were phenomenal. So happy with the end product. Well, that wraps up this video. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know below in the comments. I know I went over a lot of information. I really appreciate the feedback and the comments I got for my last video. So thank you guys so much for watching.